everybody. Thanks for joining us and welcome to Money Chat, where we talk all things money, from the economy to housing to crypto and so much more. If it relates to your wallet and your well-being, we've got you covered right here on Money Chat. I'm your host, Trina Robinson. Today, we're exploring artificial intelligence, which may be one of the most talked about and controversial topics of our time. The impact AI will have on our lives and livelihoods of everyday Americans remains unknown. I talked with Florida State University professor Darren Brooks about how artificial intelligence could transform the types of jobs that thrive and those that may fall by the wayside. Let's start, Professor Brooks, by telling me exactly what is AI?
Well, it's a great question and something that a lot of people have confusion about, because I think when you ask most people that, a lot of times they would think it's kind of this supercharged Google, right? But it's really a technology that's built on language models that allow the algorithms to anticipate what's needed. So as you're speaking, as you're asking it information and questions, what it will actually do is start to fill in these gaps. It'll start to learn from what you're saying, and it starts to predict what your needs might be. Now, it also has a search function that has capabilities to go out into various forms of, whether it's the web or research information, even now for things like images and photos and graphics, and it can start to pull these things back in to present in some unique format that the user is requesting.
I was looking at a study by Goldman Sachs, and it was saying in a few years, say 6 to 7% of the workforce could be displaced by AI if it's adopted. Does that confound you, or are those in line with what you would think would happen?
No, I think right now it's pretty much in line with what we're seeing more holistically. There's ranges of expectations from millions of jobs being eliminated to some sort of combination of augmenting certain types of work. And I think that 6 to 7% is somewhat in line. You could also break it down to a task level. So I would say you're going to be looking at more routine, kind of traditional cognitive tasks, things that we do administratively, data entry, even certain elements of writing are going to be augmented or even automated by AI. So I think that's a fair estimate at this point. From a dystopian standpoint, some people are projecting that, oh gosh, within the next 5, 10, 20 years, humans won't be working at all. I'm not quite on that end. I think that, we're going to start to see certain types of opportunities present themselves that even 10, 15 years ago, if we looked at what work was like, well before then, some of the jobs out there that we see are relatively new. Telemedicine, podcast producers. Who would have ever thought you would be doing those types of jobs? So while there will be jobs that will be eliminated, and technology historically has allowed that to happen, as we've advanced ourselves as a civilization, but I think it's also going to create new opportunities that we should embrace and prepare the younger generation to be able to work effectively in those types of roles.
And that was going to be my next question. How critical is it for training for young people, in particular in developmental programs, to get them ready for this change that inevitably is going to come?
I think it's paramount in, and I think some of the communications we've had through my article that I wrote for the university, it's going to really require that we rethink how we train and educate people. And I'm not talking about just from higher education. I'm talking through K-12, higher education, postgraduate certifications and training opportunities. It's really going to be a collective move to train and continue to reskill our workforce. Because what I see is that it's going to require a more skilled workforce, not less people involved in it, right? If that makes sense. And I think we have to rely on the things that humans are really good at. So you think at things like critical thinking, analytical thinking, problem solving, the human skills on creativity, innovation, empathy, right? Those caring and character and connection elements that really are what make us unique, I think are going to be even more and more important in the future.
So you were talking mostly about what you all as colleges and universities and trade schools need to do, but
Right.
it also is incumbent on employers because a lot of workers could be
Absolutely.
displaced. Do you see an effort to reskill and upskill people to prepare for this change?
I do. I don't see it on the scale that I think we will see over the next 5, 10 years. And part of that's because organizations are still trying to figure this out as well. We talk a lot about its impact on employees, but it also has significant impact on employers in terms of how are they going to scale AI across all of the different business units within their organization. That's what a lot of them are trying to figure out. You typically will see right now a lot of isolated uses of AI. There's been traditional things. We've seen AI start to come in things like customer service roles, even in certain types of data entry roles, right? But now it's starting to accelerate at an even faster pace. So I think what you're going to see is that continual focus on we need to partner with our educational institutions, even down into the high schools and middle schools. And I think that's going to change also the nature of higher education and vocational education because people are going to be coming out of the K-12 environment expecting to be using certain new technologies, being exposed to certain things. And so I think together it's that partnership between organizations of all types and educational institutions to make sure we have the best workforce in the future.
Should workers look at AI as a trusted ally, a threat, or somewhere in between?
Um, I think the best way to answer that is looking at time, right? So if we look at it right now, you're seeing there's a lot of concern, a lot of anxiety around what this all means. And I think that's fair, right? We are in what I would consider a transitional and a transformational point in time. And we've seen this in historically as we've looked at different major transitions, whether it was the Industrial Revolution or we looked at, the knowledge revolution. These all brought about very significant concerns on what is this going to mean for me in terms of my future, my financial viability. But I don't think it's something that people should be overly fearful of. It's a natural evolution of technology and of the business environment in society in general. And I think we're going to spend a couple of years over the next, maybe decade trying to figure some of this out. And people are going to then realign themselves in terms of what are my capabilities, getting myself, skilled in order to be successful in this new world, this new environment.
You touched on this a little bit. Will there come a time when AI replaces so many jobs that people won't need to work or be able to work? And maybe this whole thing about universal basic incomes come into play for some jobs.
Trina, quite frankly, I don't know if I'll be around
Me either.
if that actually happens. I really don't see that. I can see in the future that if we were to take a snapshot in time today, I can see 25 to 30% of the jobs that exist today no longer existing. Now, that doesn't mean they will completely be eliminated. They will be so different compared to what we see today. But there are going to be some jobs that aren't going to be necessary anymore. But again, I go back to, as with any end, there's usually a new beginning. And so we're kind of at that transitional point. And with that in mind, we have to move kind of psychologically through this change, this transition. So there's going to be ebbs and flows, concerns, frustrations as we navigate what the future is going to look like with this technology that, quite frankly, is hitting us at a much more rapid pace than at any other time in history. But I think with anything, it comes with new opportunities, and I think that's what we should embrace.
Recently, Elon Musk's Grok chatbot, which is AI driven, came under fire for being, well, a sexual deviant. The company says they've taken immediate action to curb Grok's ability to conduct risque deepfakes. Gaddy Schwartz reports.
Tonight, Grok, the AI tool from Elon Musk's company X, is under fire. The app, which has an image editing feature, is now being used to create non-consensual and sexualized deepfake images of women and children.
Grok was producing at least a dozen inappropriate images every minute. People were commanding the chatbot to take people's clothes off, basically.
An uptick in those pictures after Grok enhanced its image generation abilities with a new model last month.
I was disgusted.
Content creator Ashley St. Clair, who has a child with Musk, says she's seen countless explicit images of herself, which she says were generated by the chatbot and shared across the platform. She's asked Grok to stop sharing the images.
There should be consequences because this is a much larger issue that's outside of me.
One analysis found more than 50% of images generated by Grok between December 25th and January 1st were non-consensual sexual images, primarily targeting women, and 2% of them depicting a person who appeared to be 18 or younger.
With Grok Imagine, you can turn any of your pictures into videos.
An NBC News review found even though many of the inappropriate images were taken down, Grok continues to produce sexualized images of non-consenting parties. Musk did not respond to NBC's request for comment, but posted on X that anyone using Grok to make illegal content will suffer the same consequences as if they uploaded illegal content. Though Musk also using Grok to make a deepfake version of himself wearing a bikini, calling the app's creation perfect. Gadi Schwartz, NBC News.
The problems we're sometimes seeing with Grok and different issues surfacing with other artificial intelligence models should remind every parent that danger exists for kids unless their guardians are ultra vigilant and steering children away from potential perils. I recently chatted with the author of Tech Confidential, Kat Erickson, who has some sage advice for moms and dads about why AI is not your child's friend. What is this book about and why you and Denise wrote it?
Sure. So Denise and I have both been in tech for 20 plus years. About a year ago, Denise was having a really tough time, and I was having one of the greatest weeks I've had in my career. I called Denise up and her back was out. She was burned out. And we just had this moment where we thought, it just doesn't have to be this hard. So we started thinking about all the lessons that we could share that we've learned over the years. We started calling up some friends in the industry who had lessons they wanted to share. And out of those conversations came this book.
Phenomenal. I was reading some of the notes on the book, and in one of the little blurbs, it said something like, Silicon Valley is not the glossy utopia that we're promising our youth, that they've been sold. What did you mean by that?
You know, when I grew up in Mississippi, the idea of working in tech was so glamorous. You know, we get to be brilliant, change the future. As Alan Kay, inventor of the Atari, said, we get to invent the future. And then you get into tech, and sometimes it's kind of a frying pan, and leaving one place and going to another is simply a different frying pan. And so if you can get past these stereotypes, these things that you really thought tech would be, then you can learn to navigate and find ways to innovate, to let your curiosity, fuel your passion. But it's not exactly what we dreamed of as kids.
What kinds of dysfunctions are there from folks like me on the outside? I've never worked in Silicon Valley, so I have no idea. I thought it was glamorous and, all the parties and the innovation and, the startups and the unicorns.
Yeah. I don't think you read the Steve Jobs biography and think, oh, wow, that was an easy guy to work for. And a lot of the CEOs are not easy people to work for. Sometimes for me, words are the hardest. One CEO, he was trying to tell me, you need to get over your anxiety so that we can have a conversation. But what came out was, Kat, sometimes it makes me physically ill to speak to you. Another guy wanted to tell me, I don't feel like you prepared me well enough for this talk that I was about to give. But what he said was, Kat, you led me to drinking. So there are moments, even when folks aren't trying to be toxic, where if you let that kind of stuff live rent-free in your head, it can be hard to bounce back from.
Do you think it's any harder as a woman? Because I know a few women who've worked in tech, but not a lot.
Yeah. When we wrote the book, folks really wanted us to put this in a women in tech category. And I kept trying to say, these experiences aren't unique. I've watched guys walk out of the bathroom just as teary-eyed as I have. I think for women, it's often, we can start to discuss it more. It's become more the norm to say, this is not okay. And I think for men, sometimes it's still not okay for them. They don't feel like it's okay to say, this is happening and it's not okay. I think some of these things are universal, perhaps more prevalent for women, but the same thing does happen to men.
All right, let's go on to the second part about
Okay.
parenting and AI. One of the biggest problems I see is that sometimes with technology now, the kids know way more than the parents.
Yes. It You're right, but it's the parents' job to set the boundaries. Just like we had to think through what limits are we going to set for social media, for group text, and for text messaging, we have to be as intentional about the decisions we're making with things like ChatGPT. Are we going to review all activity, spot check, simply trust them? These are decisions that we have to make, and the kids should know where those boundaries are.
Now, you say that there are three simple practical steps parents can take to guide their kids through AI. What are
Mhm.
those?
Yeah, the first is what we just said. Let's decide on the privacy line, communicate it, and then talk about it on an ongoing basis. The second one is that we as parents have the chance to shape those conversations for the kids. All of the large language models like ChatGPT and like Claude have the ability to do what we call a custom prompt. And all that is a rule for how this conversation should go with children. At our house, I instruct it to provide age appropriate questions, redirect certain topics, and always look for learning opportunities and teaching opportunities. It's okay for the kids to ask about dragons, but maybe we could throw a little math in there as well. And then the last one is that enforcing these rules is our job. OpenAI has added new guardrails, and those are going to let any parents go in and configure some of these options for children. And it's never been easier. You can actually go into ChatGPT and say, what are the new parental controls? And it's going to walk you through what they are, what they mean, and how to set them up.
Give me some other ideas on how parents can make this not like their big brother, but that is their job to,
Mhm.
oversee what their kids do, but to make it more of a sharing and learning experience.
Yeah, I really think being honest with kids about these language models is a good first step. To have a conversation with them at their level, to say, these are machines, they are not your friend. And when we as computer scientists and engineers are training these language models, they are trained not to understand your emotions and to help you work through things. They are trained to keep a conversation going.
We saw the young man who committed suicide and was kind of urged on by the
Yeah.
model. Um, should we tell our kids that these can be dangerous? Point blank, this can be dangerous.
Yes, just like you would tell them that anything else could be dangerous. You don't say you need to ride a helmet when you're riding a bike because I said so. You say here's what could happen if you ride a bike without a helmet. The incident you talked about is so unfortunate. OpenAI is taking steps to improve parental controls, but would they have on their own? Absolutely not.
What's the bigger picture in how AI is somewhat shaping the futures of these kids? Not mine so much,
Yeah.
but as we look forward, I mean, it's part of their lives every day almost.
Yeah, think about how the internet shaped our lives when we could, use Google or Alta Vista, the old search engines, when we had a report. ChatGPT and these language models are just another avenue that democratizes access to knowledge in this larger world for kids. I want us to see it as an equalizer for learning across, you know, states and countries and the world. Um, but we need to understand that it's a co-pilot. It's not a pilot. It's one tool, and it's not something that should ever be personified. It's not a friend. It is a computer, but used correctly could help you in your learning and exploration of so many different topics.
For parents who feel just absolutely flabbergasted, overwhelmed that, I barely can keep up with my email and my text
Mhm.
messages and, school and work for the kids and all this stuff, what would be your suggestion to them to try and get a handle on this and better prepare their kids to
Yeah.
use this tool?
The dream for AI is that it does the stuff we don't want to. And what we as parents, at least for myself, I don't have is time. And so when I'm doing something, let's say going to the grocery store, it takes a lot of time. So now, before I go, I take my grocery list, I take a picture of it, I upload it to ChatGPT, and I say, put this in order of where everything is in the grocery store, because that's going to save me 15, 30 minutes at times. So just as I go, I'm thinking, how can I save time doing this? What do I need to do to plan this next vacation? Where should we go on vacation? Things that I might have Googled before, now I can get a more complete answer that's specific to what I'm really looking for. So just look for opportunities where it might help you, and then you use it a little and you'll use it a little more, and it becomes less scary.
Where's this all going? It's exciting, it's scary, but I know Goldman Sachs had recently put out this big, report on how many jobs are going to be lost and displaced. But then I was listening to a lecture this morning where the guy was saying, remember during the Industrial Revolution, some jobs went away, but then others were created.
Yes.
Should we see this as something, this whole new world where it's going to open new avenues?
Mm-hmm. I think anytime that there's uncertainty, there's fear. But I think that, like with the Industrial Revolution and like many other waves of technology, more opportunity has been created. When more people can write more interesting things, you need more reviewers. Each new abundance creates a new scarcity. That's how tech companies are formed. We look for what's abundant and we try to figure out what's the next problem to solve. And AI is going to be no different, but it is something where we should really watch closely. What are the guardrails? How is it being used? And what new regulations should or should not be put in place along the way?
Now to one of the marvels artificial intelligence can create. Here's Lorena Inclán with a look at how AI is turning up on construction work sites in a very innovative way.
What does artificial intelligence have to do with a construction site? Well, a local company says a lot, and they're using it to their advantage to build a luxury residence in Sunny Isles Beach. With stunning views of the ocean and nearby sandy beaches, the new Bentley residences will soon line the coast of Sunny Isles Beach. Coastal Construction's Chief Investment Officer Patrick Murphy says the foundation is set. Next up is going vertical.
That the foundations, the piles here on this job, are some of the deepest in the world, about 200 feet, and there's hundreds of them here supporting this building right on the beautiful beach.
But getting to this point in construction came with fewer headaches than in the past, when project estimators like Spencer Collins would have to count and measure every inch of a project by hand, then lug around reams of paper at every job site.
It would take us up to 4 days to complete a quantity survey of the building.
And because time is money, Murphy set out to fix the issue. He founded Toggle AI, which allows crews to upload plans. Then the machine does the work for them.
In a building like this, going through those plans, it's hundreds of pages, all sorts of notes and details. Things get missed on accident. But the AI can go down to the pixel level and be extremely accurate.
And it's not the only company racing to use artificial intelligence for construction. Others, like Beam AI, are also turning to the technology to cut down on tedious work.
It's monumental. I mean, it's the equivalent of introducing a calculator to a mathematician.
For Coastal Construction, in its first year using Toggle AI, the company saved more than 10,000 hours of work and $1 million in costs. Murphy says this model can and should be used to tackle the workforce housing issue in the U.S.
About 20% of construction costs are borne in the pre-construction. The time to do the estimates, the carry cost, the permitting, all of that. I believe that artificial intelligence is going to shrink that down to days or weeks, saving that 20% for the ultimate end user or buyer. And that means more housing, which means reduced costs for all of us.
For Collins, there's no doubt AI is here to stay.
It's going to completely revolutionize all of construction. I mean, the only thing that it can't do yet is actually build the building, but I'm sure they're working on that too.
We hope you enjoyed this in-depth look at artificial intelligence. And remember, money doesn't guarantee happiness, but it does provide tranquility, security, and even some peace of mind. Learn to use it wisely. And we'll see you next time right here on Money Chat. I'm your host, Trina Robinson.